right, welcome to episode 69 of the Jake Blanchard podcast. Two sponsors, real quick, shouting them out. Check the comments in the podcast below. You'll see both Fellowship brand, premium men's grooming products, as well as Stream to See, sunscreen and personal care products. Code JBP gets you 10% off of both of those brands. My guest today, Ari Galper. He is the best-selling author and the creator of the Unlock the Game, which has been called the #1 trust-based selling approach out there in the market. Additionally, he's leveraged his degrees and his expertise in instructional design and creating sales strategies for large global companies. He's based in Australia. He has a TV show called Unlocking the Sales Game, which can be found on Blueprint TV. And the man is here with me today to share his journey, his knowledge on sales, and to encourage us all to do a little bit more trust-based selling for sure. So, Ari, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jake, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, you're got to do some research about you. There's plenty of content about you on the internet, my man. You are out there doing some pretty incredible things, especially in the world of business and the world of sales. Just trying to get a little understanding of what your background is like. Where are you from? Where are you living today? Let's start with that.
Yeah, I'm originally from San Diego, California. I grew up there, and I met my wife on a dating site 20 years ago. She's from Sydney, was working in Los Angeles. We actually met in California. And then this pre-swiping, just the photo and the text, you know.
Really?
So she emails me. We had a conversation. It was 2 hours from where I was at. We started dating, and then she's like, "Hey, why don't you come visit my family in Australia?" And I'm like, "Australia? That's pretty far, but why not?" You know. So I came out here. We got engaged and married out here, and then we moved back. We moved back to LA. The plan was to stay in California long term. Then about 6 months later, a little gift came to our lives. That's our son, Toby. And after about a day after he was born, we were told that he had Down syndrome. And at first, we didn't know what that meant to our lives. So we realized what a gift we had on our hands. If you know someone has Downs, they're amazing, gorgeous people. They're so loving and transparent, and they have no hidden agenda. I wrote a book about him, and then he inspired me. And then we realized to give him more support, we'd move out here because my wife has more family in Australia. So we packed up our bags, moved out here, been here about 20 years now.
So you're in Australia today?
Yeah, in Sydney.
Okay, and so I'm gonna pivot a little bit here. Like, Australia's in the news a little bit in the U.S. just because of the lockdowns and things that are going there from a COVID standpoint. While I've got you and you're there firsthand, like, what is that like right now, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so we had a window of opportunity. We were doing pretty well last year, no cases, and all of a sudden, and so they're really slow in the vaccination. That was the problem. And then Delta came in, and that gap filled that gap, and now people got really sick, and so they're really going aggressive with locking people down, and they're trying to increase the vaccination rate a lot faster. So they're playing catch up right now. So right now, yeah, most of the country's pretty much at home until they can catch up with the vaccinations.
Okay, so I imagine you've been doing a lot of stuff from the chair that you're sitting in right now.
Pretty much. I mean, I do anyway, so I'm used to it. This pretty much is my world now, is virtual, given our distance. So I'm used to it, but we're just all kind of adapting for the moment.
Okay, and so going back to earlier, you were in the state. You were obviously from San Diego, grew up in the States. What got you into corporate America?
Yeah, so I was in sales out of college, and I ended up being a sales manager in a software company. And we launched the first online website tracking tools, like it's called Google Analytics now, where you can collect website data. And so we sold the first tool back then. And I was managing 18 people at a time, salespeople. And I remember this fateful day that I had where I got an inbound call with an opportunity. They're a big company. And if I close this one sale, it'll double the business in one transaction. So this guy agrees to a conference call and a demo of his product. And it was a Friday afternoon, 4:00. And I called the number on the speakerphone. He says, hello. He says to me, "Hey, Ari, let us tell you who's on the phone today." And next thing I know, I'm hearing all these executives on the line, like, this is Mike, the CEO. This is Julie, I'm head of marketing. I'm like, wow, man, this is a big call. The call we hope is as off as possible. So I introduced myself, gave him a live demo, and then they were loving. They were so amazed by the whole product. And I said to myself, this is a done deal. This is like the dream come true. An hour goes by. We end our call. The guy says to me, "Ari, we love it. This is great. Follow up with us 2 weeks from now. We'll give you a call back." I followed up with, I hung up the phone. I reached for the off button on the speakerphone, and by accident, I hit the mute button instead. They were right next to each other. And then a click happened and they thought I hung up the phone. And a voice inside of me said, Ari, go to the dark side, be a fly on the wall, listen in. And I actually heard them talking amongst themselves on that call. And it was the complete opposite of what they told me.
Oh,
They said things like, we're not going to go with him, keep using him, keep shopping around for cheaper prices. And I was like blown away. And I hit the off button and I said to myself, man, this is all wrong. The sales model has got to change. I mean, who said it's okay to lie, people? So that was my whole foundational moment that broke me into the whole trust-based selling world.
Yeah, so let's dive deeper into that trust-based selling. By the way, I've got your book right here. I've been thumbing through it, have not read it all the way yet, so you're gonna have to educate me a little bit. But I love the different myths and kind of the thesis that you're presenting throughout the course of the book. As I was hitting the top of the waves on it before our discussion today, like they couldn't have been just that call that filled this book full of content. So like, what other perspective around trust-based selling did you have to fill out in order to write this?
Yeah, so I've been at this for 20 years now. You can imagine I've coached thousands of people all over the world, and I realized some interesting trends over the years in sales, and that is that a lot of people who have been exposed to the traditional models of the 80s sales gurus and the books and the CDs back then are still carrying over those notions today. They're still kind of conditioned, the same mindset, the same behavior, the same myths. Like, for instance, people still think that sales is a numbers game. They think it's like how many calls you make equals how many sales you make. Well, we discovered it's not about how many calls you make anymore. It's about how deep you go on each conversation, how good you are at trust building, not how many calls you make. So we kind of flipped the model. Like, there's a classic one we discovered as well. People still believe today that the sales loss at the end of the process, when a deal, it looks like it's all going to go well, but turns out we discovered the sales loss at the beginning and not the end. And I'll prove it to you right now for fun. If someone calls your office tomorrow morning, you pick up the phone and you hear, hi, my name is, I'm with We Are A. What goes through your mind in about 3 seconds?
No.
It's over to hello.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
a lot's changed over the decades. And unfortunately, a lot of people still carry the old way of thinking today.
Well, and it's so saturated, especially cold calling, right? There's so many companies out there, scammers. I mean, my phone just blows up daily of people like, hey, Social Security, hey, your car insurance. Like, they're not even real calls. So like, it's few and far between when I do get a real call on a cold call. And when it is, it's not dynamic. It's not interesting. It's not, I thought I was just like, hey, are you interested in this? No, go away. Like, goodbye.
Yeah, unfortunately, what's happened is we've been taught to present somebody with our solution. What we have never learned to do is build trust with people. And that's what we do, is we teach people how to build trust first and not focus on the sale. It's almost like a doctor-patient relationship, right? So basically the patient has an injury, you're a doctor, you basically start the conversation around their problem. You don't start it around the solution.
100%. And, I was looking into the word trust before you and I hopped on this call today. And, I know what trust is conceptually, but I wanted to see what like the actual definition was, right? So that's belief in reliability, truth, ability, strength of someone or something to allow credit to. And then there's other definitions that call out things like character, confidence, a dependence on the future. And I found that to be really interesting because I hadn't really unpacked the word trust, and specifically I haven't really looked at like trust-based selling. So are you hitting on those types of topics, or are you defining it as something differently?
In many ways, it's what you just described. And and the way we expand that definition is that we discovered that relationship building and trust building are mutually exclusive. Meaning, you don't have to layer in the whole, hey, how's it going? How's the weather out? You don't have to build a relationship with someone pre-sale to onboard them, build trust with them. You see, ideal clients, they don't want to become your friend. They just want their problem solved. But we're taught in sales to get them to like us, to know us, build a relationship with them. And hopefully if all goes well, they'll buy from us. Well, that's a long way of doing things. And so we tell our clients, stop building relationships with people. Focus on trust only. And trust is when you focus on their issues. and you have bedside manner, you're empathetic around their issues, you help them amplify what's going on. It's a different way of thinking and a different mindset altogether.
So then is it more, and I've heard the word thrown around like consultative selling. How is it different than say consultative selling, or is that a loose term?
It's a bit of a loose term. It comes from the idea of you enter a conversation with somebody, ask them about their business, what their problems are. See, in our world, we don't fish for problems. That's classic selling. Hey, how's your business going today? Do you have any problems? No. Click. So what we do instead is we teach a model where you enter the conversation already knowing what your market's problems are in advance. You know generally what their core 3 or 4 challenges are, and you start the conversation entering the dialogue around their issues. And that way you have pretty much a hit and you enter the conversation with them. So the way we start our calls is in the typical model is this. Hi, my name is, I'm with, we are a, right? That's a classic kind of, you have a couple minutes. How's it going today? You know, those classic entry points.
Yeah.
So we handle like this. We say, hi, my name's Ari, and I'm hoping you can help me out for a moment.
So now I'm helping you.
And human nature, when you're engaged that way in a very humble, soft way without presenting a solution, usually is going to be, how can I help you? Because you don't know who the person is. They could be a customer, they could be, you don't know. So then you have a dialogue, and then you go from there and you say, I'm just giving you a call to see if you'd be open to some different ideas and insights on ways to address the issues that you might be having around generating new clients for your company. Would you be open to that?
Yeah, sure, I'd be open.
Right, see, so I'm entering the conversation around a problem. I'm not saying, I can help you solve this problem, and here's our solution. Because they have to own the problem first. It's like a therapist and a patient. The patient doesn't own their own problem, it's going to be a tough patient to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in you being from the consulting coaching world too, like I enter a lot. I'm a career consultant by trade, and I do some high performance coaching as well. And I always like to set the expectation that like, hey, you are the expert on you, or you're the expert on your field. I'm just here to help facilitate the exchange of information and to offer you some potential opportunities to go execute these solutions. I'm not here to pretend like I know everything that's happening current state. And it sounds like this is very similar in that, where it's like,
correct.
How much, and is this associated with like, I'm watching the way that you're asking questions. I've recently been introduced to like NLP. Is there like an aspect of neurolinguistics programming?
No, that's more mirroring and matching people, where you match their personalities and you mirror their tonality to try and get them to kind of connect with you. Okay. So we don't do any energy where we have to adapt to somebody else.
Okay.
We just remain authentic to ourselves. But we basically we do consciously remove any pressure from the process that might trigger resistance along the way. And that's what makes it work. Have you heard of the martial art called Aikido from Japan?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was an Aikidoist, and basically I took that concept of Aikido where when you get resistance coming your way, you don't overcome it, you deflect it. So it's the same. We took that same philosophy and put it into our system. So basically, when you get resistance coming your way in selling, you don't try to overcome it, which is classic selling, which is trying to overcome objections. Instead, you diffuse the resistance and you re-engage again without breaking the momentum. That's kind of how we handle things.
Yeah, and I know I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and there's certainly Aikido and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are different martial arts, but I think that concept of staying calm, deflecting, like you're reacting to it, but you're doing it in a very like smooth way. You're just kind of pushing things aside, pushing things away from you, like that kind of makes a lot of sense. But like, how do you? There's got to be a point in time in that process where you shift from asking questions to solving problems. Like you've got to get to that point, right? I mean, so for these companies, like they have a solution, right? They're trying to get into the conversation. How do you make that transition or cross that bridge?
Well, you have to ask this question to make sure they're ready for the solution. Because what happens without this question, we jump into early and then we spoil the whole thing because we're pressuring them. So the question is this: you want to ask this question. You want to say, after you describe the problem, they agree to it. You want to say this. You want to say, is this a priority for you to solve once and for all? Or are you happy to live with it as it is? And I'm okay either way. Let me know.
That is very different. There's no desperation in what you just said. How are you a salesperson? There's no desperation. Come on, Ari, where's the desperation?
That's the whole point. What they're feeling for me is I'm centered. I'm a rock. I'm not going to go anywhere. In fact, I'm so detached from the outcome that I'm not going to play any of the sales games they're probably used to already. And that in itself differentiates me, and that builds trust.
Wow. Yeah, well, what a cool concept and I think obviously there's sales professionals who listen to this podcast. I think it's probably a pretty important time to take a step back and reflect, right? Like, am I, one, desperate? Two, does my language reflect that? And then, three, how might I take a step back and change the way that I'm speaking to my prospects or speaking to my existing clients for upsell, and be able to have a more meaningful, trustworthy dialogue and become a
I'll give you an example right now. I'll give you a classic example when I'm sure a lot of your listeners will probably cringe right now, realizing what they've been doing for so many years. I'm going to ask all your viewers and listeners to remove one key phrase forever from the vocabulary as of today and never use it ever again in the world of business. And here it is. I'm going to ask all your viewers to never again use the phrase follow up ever again as of today.
Follow up.
And I'm sure if I had the raise of a hand, I asked everybody, how many of you in the last few weeks called somebody and said, hi, I'm giving you a call to follow up? I'm sure hands would go up. If I asked how many emailed someone in the last few weeks, are you calling a follow-up? What's the only industry that typically uses the word follow-up?
Sales, 100%.
Exactly. So here you are, heart-centered, not aggressive, a coach, but you call someone and say, hi, I'm giving you a call to follow up. What are they thinking?
It's more about you than it is about them.
He's moving this thing where? Towards a sale, and it's over right there. You don't even know it. You're automatically associated with that negative sales person stereotype. The language that we still use comes from the old notions that no longer apply. There's a few more classic ones. You might remember the old ones like touching base, checking in. These are all like 1980s classic sales lines that we still use today that people aren't even aware is killing their sales opportunities.
Yeah. Well,
so
and some people probably too use them, all together. Like, hey, I'm just, following up, checking in with you. How's the wife doing? Want to follow up about the, did you go to that game? Like, it's a lot. It could be a lot.
Welcome to the 80s. So we have our own. We developed our own what we call trust-based languaging. Okay. Our own body of work around phraseology that replaces typical sales language. Let me give you an example of what you use instead of follow-up in our world. Okay. So rather than saying, I'm giving you a call to follow up, what you say instead is this. You say, I'm giving you a call to see if you have any feedback on our previous conversation, any feedback on our last meeting, any feedback on our proposal. See, feedback's going away from the sale, not towards a sale. When you go away from the sale, what that does, it removes the pressure and the momentum out of the dialogue, and they feel comfortable engaging with you and telling you the truth. And that's the goal here. The goal is for you to create enough trust with someone so they open up to you, tell you the truth, so you know where you stand. You're not chasing ghosts anymore who aren't going to buy anyways.
And if you take a step back with them in that way, and they really did have an intention to purchase, they'll probably pull you forward further than you were on the sale, right?
That's exactly what happens. On their own, they say, how do we move forward? You're like, what? I didn't even try and close them and they're moving forward? Yeah. So it's like the Aikido move, right? When you step into the energy and just kind of guide them, then you're like, whoa, that's so powerful, but it felt so easy.
So then what's is this across the board? Like, does this work in e-commerce or online sales as it does for like large corporations that are on point of purchase displays? Or is this like just picking up the phone and following up on like kind of larger sales? Like, can this be applied across the gamut? I guess is what I'm saying.
Look, it has the most impact if you're in a low volume, high price point business, high margin, high trust model, like advisory services, coaching, consulting, software sales, long sales cycles, high trust, high transaction. That's really where the value of this is.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great distinction to make, right? Because there's definitely a lot of relationships that you can build quickly. This is the quick, hey, I bought some like juice at a farmer's market the other day, like, homemade fresh squeeze, like a Kavita, some kind of juice, kava, something like, I don't know what it's called, but it tasted good. I bought it. I won't remember the guy's name. He was just a guy at the farmer's market with the juice. And if I go back to the farmer's market, I'll get the juice again. Like, he doesn't need to, I trust his product if I like the way that it tastes, versus having like deep, meaningful conversations or, really well-structured follow-up. It was not follow-up. How can I refer to follow-up without calling it follow-up? That's what I want to know, Ari.
I don't know. That's a good question.
For sure. But don't call it follow-up in the actual exchange.
Exactly.
So what other like major mistakes are people making outside of maybe misphrasing things or not really being aware of how much weight their words actually have in the sales process?
Well said. I'll give you another scenario probably people can relate to pretty well. Let's say on the phone with somebody for the first time, a first conversation, inbound lead, referral, first call is going well. They're fully qualified. There's some chemistry there. They look pretty good. The call comes to an end. Normally in sales, we're taught to do what at the end of a call like that? Say things like what? How about we?
Yeah, what are the next steps?
Yeah, how about we move things where?
Forward.
We're programmed to move things to a next step because we think if we don't do that, we're going to lose them. So same scenario, call is going well, good chemistry, call comes to an end. Rather than saying, hey, how about we move forward? What we say instead is this. We say, where do you think we should go from here?
So you're putting them in the driver's seat.
Now, what's going on here? You're shifting the power to them. And when you say to somebody, where do you think we should go from here? They're usually in a state of shock. They can't believe somebody in business would actually ask them what they want to do. They're so used to being pulled down a process. The moment they feel that next step thing going on, their guard goes up. And now the games begin. Now it becomes painful and dysfunctional because now you're chasing what I call a ghost. Somebody didn't tell you the truth. When you say to somebody, where do you think we should go from here? Usually they say things like, I've got one more question. Or well, what about this? What comes out from them right there and then in the beginning? The truth. And that's your goal. Your goal is to build a bubble of vulnerability with someone at the beginning of your process. So they feel comfortable opening up to you so you can see if you're both a fit or not. If you're not a fit, you disengage. You don't just chase anything that moves that looks like an opportunity.
That makes sense. And then I don't know, maybe I'm going too nuanced here, but if it is for a lot of people a newer experience to be sold to in that way, giving them the power, those types of things, have you had or have your clients had experiences where people don't know what to do with that power and they still lead them on a little bit? They're like, well, I don't know, like maybe follow up with me in a couple of weeks, or does that just give you an idea of how serious they are?
Look, it is a mindset shift, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
It's like the first time someone's on the mat.
Yeah.
They're a white belt, first day on the mat. They're just like, what do I do? So it does require being open and following your sword, saying to yourself, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to start again and learn how to build trust the right way. And, no matter what your age you're at, if you're still selling the old way and chasing people and following up with people, I can tell you right now, you're in for a lot of pain because the market and the customers and your prospects know the game. They know it hello when it's over. And if you not rise above that noise and be aware of your own behavior and how you're being perceived, you are digging a hole for yourself as fast as you can imagine.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I appreciate the perspective, and obviously learning about trust-based selling from the best out there, right? Number one professional out there, unlocking the sales game. I want to talk to you too about you do a lot of keynoting, you do a lot of like speaking, masterminds, you've been on stage with some of the biggest names out there, including Tony Robbins, et cetera, et cetera. Like, talk to me a little bit about, are you speaking specifically on the book? Are there other topics that you talk to large groups of people about? Like, what are you doing in that space?
I only talk on trust-based selling.
Okay.
That's my space of expertise that no one understands as much as I do for the last 20 years. It's my niche, and I'm sticking with it.
I love it. And obviously you're in Australia now, kind of locked down from travel, those kinds of things. Do you have any upcoming events, upcoming travel, speaking?
No travel for the time being. It's all virtual. So I do a lot of work with large groups, what I call a 90-day breakthrough program, where we meet every other week. We do a session like this, pretty intense. And I do a lot of what I call in-deal coaching, where people bring me their sales call recordings, and I hear the actual recordings and I coach them on the spot. And of course, you mentioned earlier my show. The show actually is called Stump the Guru, and it's on live streaming. I do it once a month. People can jump on this show and challenge me and try and throw me off my the guru off the mountain with a tough question. So that's a lot of fun also.
You know, how'd you get into doing that? Like, what brought up that opportunity?
Well, I find it over the years, people ask me so many questions, and they were trying to stump me with an answer. Every once in a while, I get a little cocky person who's been in sales for a long time, with the arms crossed kind of thing. When I do live events, I get a hand go up like this, trying to stump me with a question, and then they can't stump me. And then I say, you know what? Let me do a Stump the Guru show and let the world come forward and throw me your most complex, challenging sales question, and let's see if I can answer from a trust-based perspective.
And how long have you been doing this for?
About 4 months, every month.
Okay.
You can check it out at unlockthegame.com/stumptheguru. There's the previous recordings are there.
Okay, I will. I'll add that to the description of the podcast as well. So if you're listening, just kind of click through to that. That's definitely a fun watch in tandem with this podcast. Hey, you mentioned it early on, and we kind of bounced over it. You talked about a book that you had written around your son, Toby. And you touched on Down syndrome, things like that. I was wondering if you could kind of expand my perspective as an adult, as a parent, as what you were able to, how this has changed you and the perspectives that you've brought. I read a little bit online around your book. Again, didn't necessarily read it, but I'd love to pull this thread a little bit and understand your perspective here.
Yeah. So, Toby's impacted me so much that I could have took his way of viewing the world and embedded it into my approach. So he's so transparent. He has no hidden agenda. When you're with him, it's pure love. All right. And I think he's our role model. And I think other people don't have that. They've got agendas in the back of their mind. They're thinking about themselves. They think about and they can't be present with people. And I think we've lost the art of being present with other people we don't know. And if I took his philosophy of the world and embed it into my language and my approach, and if you can be like him with someone in your business and in sales opportunities, people can't help but to work with you and pay you money, because your differentiation, your distinction is your ability to build trust with people. And he does it so naturally that I wrote this book about him called Lessons from Toby, how to stay centered in your business and personal life. It has 365 pages. Each page is a lesson in there. Over the whole year, people keep by their bedside and they open it each morning and read a lesson I learned from him. And he grounds me, and he basically is the mascot to our whole business with our thousands of clients that we have around the world.
Wow. And how old is Toby now?
He's 17 already.
17.
He's going to be 18 soon. He's a real independent guy. He doesn't want me to help much. He puts himself to bed now, and he plays basketball, and he's got goals. He wants to have his own place. He wants to get a job. He wants to make money. It just astounds me at his focus and ambition and his wantingness to be independent of anybody else helping him. I mean, geez, I know a lot of adults who can learn from him.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. That's what an incredible story that is. And so as you're reflecting on that book, reflecting on this book, like what else do you have to say around trust-based selling? You got anything else in the works, things that you're working on today that you mind sharing?
I do have a new book coming out next year.
Okay.
It's called The One Call Sale.
All right. You mind expanding on that a little bit?
Sure. It's my advanced material that only my private clients have access to. And what I figured out last few years in my laboratory, I call it, is I've been able to compress a sales cycle from multiple steps down to one single trust-based sales conversation with somebody. Now, what that means is it's a scheduled call with someone. Let's assume you have a lead from LinkedIn or a referral, and they're qualified and they agree to a call with you. Normally, what happens in those environments are you have a call with somebody, get to know them better, exchange some information, there's some chemistry, and then there's a next step after that. There's a follow-up, there's a proposal, there's a next meeting, there's a chase afterwards. So I figured out how to end the chasing game. Where at the end of that phone call, either it's a yes or it's a no, without any awkwardness or pressure at all in the process, and without anyone feeling uncomfortable. And that the whole premise behind the concept is where it becomes a doctor-patient diagnostic conversation. So rather than when that call with you, when you schedule, rather than you try and build a relationship with them, which most people do, they say, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. So where are you from? Really? Oh, cool. What do you guys do? Hey, what do you do? Really? Like that's all removed. The relationship piece is removed from the process. All that remains is the diagnostic piece. Now, I'm not saying cold and aloof. I'm talking about being warm and have empathy. But the whole concept is to diagnose their problem. It's called going down the iceberg, right? Because in many cases, your prospects may know what they want, but they certainly don't know what they need. Because all they see is.
Could you say that again?
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion. There's a deep truth here, is that your prospects that you speak with on the phone pre-sale, they don't know what they want, but they don't know what they actually need. So it's like they see the world 180 degrees. All they see is their issue, what they want to solve it. We see things, you and I, on the outside as a 360 degrees, meaning we have to assume they don't know what they actually need. So the doctor, when you go see a doctor, you say, my shoulder hurts. He doesn't say, great, here's some medicine. He says, let me take a look. Over here, whoa, wow, man, yeah, I can see it's a bit red over there. I think we need to get an x-ray and an MRI just to make sure I understand and I see the full breadth of what the cause of this is. And you're like, okay. But in sales, what do? The guy says, well, I got a problem with my team, so I got my business. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, tell me about it. I can help you with that. See, we just automatically assume once we hear a problem, we jump to the medicine. A doctor doesn't do that. In fact, I'm working on a new bumper sticker right now. It's going to have 4 words on it. You know what it's going to say? Doctors don't do coffee. Doctors don't build relationships.
Yeah.
Because they know when you introduce social norms and professional norms together, you muddy the waters and the other person does not feel obligated to a next step to solve their problem. That's the biggest mistake that people in sales make, is they think their job is to be liked and known and respected and whatever, become their friend. They don't want to become your friend. I'm sorry. In this day and age, the prospect wants to solve their problem. And what do? We muddy the waters. Think about it. They got a problem. We got the solution. Straight line of sight, right?
Yeah.
So what breaks the middle of that? Us. We fumbled the ball. We screwed up. It's all these old, hey, gotta follow up with you. Hey, let me show you a demo. They're like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's the, as you're saying this, and let me kind of draw out this analogy here. Like your body processes, like creates energy one of 2 ways, right? It either burns sugar or burns fat, right? The sugars are just carbohydrates, cheap carbohydrates. You can get some basic fuel, right? Fats, it takes a while. Your body has to actually produce ketones. in order to get into more of a state of ketosis to burn fat. What I'm hearing is like, and by the way, your body would prefer to burn carbohydrates. It's just easier for it to do that. So kind of in the same sense, there's two ways to be known, respected, appreciated. One is by talking and one is just by doing. And being a person of integrity, being a person of your word, all those things. And you'll get known either way. It is the carbohydrate of business to do coffee in that manner. It is an easy thing to do. This is how we build relationships with our friends. It's how we've always done it at school or families or whatever it is. Let's meet and let's talk, and you're going to like me because I'm likable, and then we'll talk about business. But what I'm hearing you say is, let's talk about business. You'll see the way I do business, and eventually, like, you'll trust me, and then you'll like me, and then you'll come to me when you need something.
To crystallize this as we end this conversation real briefly in a minute, is that this isn't about us.
Yeah.
This is about them.
Yeah.
And this requires being present, letting go of your agenda, not making it about your goal, and stepping into their world and go in the world staying there as long as you can until the magic words come out of their mouth, which is, how can you help me?
100%.
And then we're good.
Well, Ari, you are an absolute savage. I love your unlock the sales game. I can't wait to dive into the rest of this book. While we're talking here, where's the best place to find you, connect with you? What's your preferred method there?
First place is just go to unlockthegame.com. My books are there. There's a free intro course there. And of course, reach out to us for a conversation with us as well, to chat with us and see what it's like not to be sold.
Ari, you are certainly what a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Looking forward to the next opportunity you and I have to connect, and take care, man.
Thanks a lot.